Saigon, April 30th, 1975. You've got 72 hours to make a decision that will determine whether you live or die. Stay under communist rule or risk everything crossing the South China Sea in an overcrowded boat. Your neighbour, a doctor who spent 2 decades saving lives, is doing something that looks strange. He's wrapping impossibly thin sheets of gold in fabric. They call it Kim Than, gold leaves. He's converting everything he's worked for his entire life into something no bigger than a deck of playing cards. The legitimate ferry to Malaysia, $10 per person. The smuggler's rickety boat across open water, $1,000 per person. Your family of 4 needs $4,000 in cash, in a currency the smuggler will actually accept. And you have 48 hours to get it. The doctor with the gold leaves boards the boat and disappears into the night. The family with savings in their Saigon bank account, still waiting at the dock when the communists arrive. 1.5 million Vietnamese fled across the South China Sea using this exact strategy. This isn't some story I made up. This was a documented survival protocol during one of the 20th century's largest refugee crises. Let me tell you something that nobody talks about when it comes to precious metals. Gold isn't for buying bread during economic collapse. It's not for trading at military checkpoints for cigarettes. Gold serves one critical purpose that nothing else can. It's for the moment when borders slam shut, when institutions completely fail, and you need to move your entire family across an international boundary with your life savings still intact. I've performed the autopsy. The cause of death is always identical, and the survivors all carried the same insurance policy. The Vietnamese boat people created one of the most sophisticated escape systems in modern history, and it was built entirely around Kim Than. Extraordinarily thin sheets of pure gold pressed into stacks and wrapped to minimize bulk. Here's the brilliance of it. A 1-ounce gold bar is worth about $4,300 at today's prices. That's 31 grams. It's conspicuous, recognizable, immediately identifiable to any border guard searching your belongings. Gold leaves, by contrast, could be stacked paper-thin, wrapped in fabric, flattened into packages no larger than a deck of cards. When discovered during random searches, they might be mistaken for aluminum foil by officials doing quick inspections. A Vietnamese refugee family could carry thousands upon thousands of dollars in a package weighing virtually nothing. When a guard discovers what looks like thin metal sheets, their immediate thought might be that the item has no real value. Discovery of a recognizable gold bar, immediate confiscation, but gold leaves hidden in clothing, they might get overlooked entirely. But here's the revelation that changes everything about how you should think about precious metals. These families didn't accumulate gold to spend during the crisis itself. They accumulated it to cross borders during the crisis and rebuild their lives after the crisis ended. Vienna, 1938. And you're a Jewish banker watching the Anschluss unfold, Nazi Germany annexing Austria. You have a certificate of deposit worth 50,000 Reichsmarks sitting in a bank vault. Your colleague has 3 diamonds sewn into the lining of his coat. Guess which one of you makes it to Switzerland alive? The most extensively documented case involves Oskar Schindler bribing SS officers with black market goods, food and diamonds to secure the release of hundreds of Jewish workers from concentration camps. These bribes worked because diamonds and gold retained purchasing power even while the Nazi system was engaged in systematic genocide. The critical element: these bribes could not be refused by Nazi officials because they represented real value that could be converted to currency or consumed directly. A person holding a certificate of deposit from a Vienna bank couldn't use that document to bribe a border guard. The document was either completely worthless or could be used to identify the holder as a target for arrest. Same pattern, same stages, same outcome every single time. Paper assets that depend on institutional validation evaporate the moment those institutions become your enemy. Tangible assets that require no external authority maintain value because their physical properties, their elemental composition, their density, their rarity are recognized universally. Let's forensically examine what safe passage actually costs in modern conflict zones, because the numbers are brutal and consistent. Syria, 2015 to 2016. 1 million Syrians reached Greece in 18 months. The pricing structure was remarkably consistent across the entire exodus. Smugglers charged approximately €1,000 per person for a seat in a dinghy to cross from Turkey to Greece. The legitimate ferry ticket, €10. That's a 10,000% markup simply by converting a legal journey into an illegal one managed by criminal networks. A Syrian family of 4 needed €4,000, months or even years of savings, simply to secure passage to Greece. Critically, this price was denominated in euros or US dollars. Families needed to convert local Syrian currency into foreign currency that smugglers would actually accept. Syrian pounds? Worthless to the smuggler, hard currency. That's the only language they speak. Ukraine, February 24, 2022. Russian tanks crossed the border at dawn. 50,000 people fled in the first 48 hours. Banks suspended electronic transfers. ATMs emptied within hours. You have $20,000 in your account on paper. In practice, you have absolutely nothing. One Ukrainian refugee escaped with Bitcoin on a USB drive and a written seed phrase. He sold some to people he knew personally for cash, obtaining $600 worth of Polish zloty. Bitcoin worked for exactly one documented refugee out of millions. Let that sink in. Here's what breaks the Bitcoin model entirely for refugees. Bitcoin requires internet connectivity to verify the blockchain, electricity to power devices, access to cryptocurrency exchanges, and familiarity with digital security procedures. Gold requires none of this. A refugee with gold can cross into any country with any degree of economic development, and that gold will retain its value and convertibility. Gold can be traded in the wealthiest countries with sophisticated banking systems, and it can be traded in the poorest countries with only informal currency markets, because gold is universally recognized. It transcends technology. It transcends institutions. It transcends governments. The most telling detail in the Ukrainian Bitcoin case? The refugee didn't continue living in Poland as a Bitcoin holder. He converted his Bitcoin to fiat currency as rapidly as possible. Even in the most favorable circumstances for cryptocurrency, a tech-savvy refugee from a country with functioning cryptocurrency infrastructure, digital assets are treated as an intermediate step toward obtaining hard currency that can be spent on food, shelter, and passage. Venezuela provides the perfect control case for this experiment. When the bolivar collapsed from 6.3 per US dollar in 2013 to over 3,000 per dollar by 2016, inflation reached 4,000% in 2017 alone. Your $10,000 in savings became worth $250 overnight. Venezuelans who had accumulated savings in local currency watched their wealth evaporate like water in the desert. And those with gold saw the nominal bolivar value increase substantially and could trade gold in black markets for US dollars at rates reflecting true international value. One of you said it perfectly after my last video: Gold isn't for getting you through collapse, it's for setting you up on the other side. Exactly right. Let's keep going deeper. Now, let's talk about what happens when you actually reach a safe country, because this is where most people's exit strategy falls apart completely. Under the Bank Secrecy Act, anyone entering or leaving the United States with more than $10,000 in currency must file FinCEN Form 105. Here's the legal loophole that reveals why gold beats cash every single time. Physical gold, bullion and bars are not classified as currency or monetary instruments under the Bank Secrecy Act. Is someone carrying $50,000 worth of gold bars across the US border does not technically trigger the Form 105 filing requirement. Someone carrying $10,001 in cash absolutely does. But here's the trap that catches people. While gold is not classified as currency, it's still subject to customs declaration obligations. Failure to declare precious metals accurately results in seizure under customs enforcement powers. Not declaring gold isn't a Bank Secrecy Act violation, but it is a customs law violation and results in confiscation of the entire amount under civil asset forfeiture statutes. The procedural mechanics are absolutely brutal. When US Customs seizes your assets, they issue a notice of seizure. You have 30 days to respond. For someone who just fled a war zone with no legal representation, they no understanding of American legal procedures, and potentially no stable address, this process becomes practically impossible to navigate. The burden of proof falls entirely on you to demonstrate the seized assets are not connected to illegal activity. For someone fleeing a conflict zone with gold accumulated through decades of working and saving, proving legitimate source without access to bank records or documentation becomes extremely difficult. Stay with me here because this is where theory meets reality, and most people's strategy collapses under scrutiny. A 1-ounce gold bar represents $4,340 at current market prices. For a refugee attempting to bribe a border guard for passage costing $300 to $500, the offering an entire 1-ounce bar represents massive overpayment, requiring complex negotiations about change. Moreover, a 1-ounce bar cannot be simply broken into fractions without specialized equipment. If you offer a bar worth $4,300 for passage costing $300, you have no practical way to access the remaining $4,000 in value without finding a jeweler to melt and divide it. Highly unlikely at a border checkpoint in the middle of the night. The optimal denomination is the fractional bar, specifically 1 gram, 5 gram, and 10 gram bars. A 1 gram gold bar weighs 0.032 troy ounces and is worth roughly $140 at current gold prices. Small enough to use as a medium of exchange for specific services without complex negotiations. A refugee can offer a 1 gram bar for passage, and the guard knows instantly the approximate value. This distribution provides multiple strategic advantages. It reduces catastrophic loss if a single bar is discovered and seized. It provides granularity for actual transactions. It allows strategic deployment of wealth at different stages of escape. You use 1 gram bars for fuel and guides in early stages. 5 gram or 10 gram bars for smugglers at major crossing points. Larger bars for final transactions in your destination country when you're rebuilding your life. Here's what the historical data is screaming at us about why hard metals work when authority collapses. Gold represents value that requires no explanation, no justification, no appeal to external authorities for validation. When a border guard encounters someone offering a gold coin, the guard instantly recognizes genuine value without needing to verify through any institutional mechanism. During state collapse, precisely when exit protocols become necessary, the institutional authority that validates paper currency evaporates entirely. A guard from a regime losing a war will not accept that regime's currency as payment because the guard fears the regime will collapse entirely, rendering the currency worthless. Gold transcends any particular regime or political system. A Nazi official in the final days of World War II would refuse a suitcase full of Reichsmarks, but might accept gold as a bribe, precisely because gold maintains value across regime changes. The guard knows that tomorrow, when a new government takes power, that gold will still be gold. And one of you commenting on my last video said it perfectly. My grandfather, who went through 2 world wars in Germany, often said you needed enough silver or gold coins to be able to bribe a guard. Your grandfather understood what money actually is when the state becomes your enemy. The certainty of liquidity shapes the guard's willingness to accept the bribe. Gold can be converted to cash in any country in the world at any time at a price determined by well-established global markets. When you offer a guard a gold bar, the guard understands they can walk into any gold buyer or international banking institution and convert that gold to cash within hours. For someone successfully reaching a safe country seeking to keep their accumulated gold without seizure, proper documentation becomes absolutely essential. And the critical principle, declaring assets at the border creates friction and delays, but failure to declare creates near certainty of seizure. The most effective legal strategy involves carrying proof of purchase, invoices, receipts, certificates of authenticity, assay certificates. For someone who accumulated gold over decades before fleeing, this documentation may be impossible to obtain. But even partial documentation strengthens your legal position dramatically. Once customs officials discover you attempted to conceal assets, your credibility is destroyed permanently. It's generally more effective to declare all holdings upon arrival and accept the delays and inquiries that result, rather than attempt partial concealment that's likely to be discovered anyway. A more sophisticated strategy: enter initially without attempting to import large quantities, then later import metals through legal channels once you've established residency and can work with legal counsel. This approach avoids the risk of having all your accumulated wealth seized at the initial border crossing. So what do you actually do? 5 critical elements. 1. Accumulate fractional gold now, not 1-ounce bars. 1 gram, 5 gram, 10 gram denominations. Purchase small quantities continuously over years, not large quantities suddenly that might trigger reporting requirements. 2. Distribute across your body during transport: money belt, pockets, clothing linings. If any single location is discovered, your entire wealth isn't lost in one seizure. 3. Assume 10 to 30% loss to bribes, seizures, and theft. Accumulate more than you expect to need because friction is inevitable. 4. Declare all holdings at your destination country border. Carry any documentation you have. Engage legal counsel immediately upon arrival. 5. Understand this is insurance for the worst-case scenario, not for buying bread during collapse, for crossing borders when institutions fail, and preserving accumulated life savings across regime changes. The question isn't whether you'll be affected by what's coming. The question is whether you'll see it coming or be standing at a closed border, wondering why your bank account shows $20,000 on paper, but the ATM is empty, while the person next to you with a deck of card-sized package of gold leaves is boarding the boat to safety. Pattern recognition isn't pessimism, it's preparation. The precedent isn't ambiguous, it's definitive. 1.5 million Vietnamese, millions of Jewish refugees, 1 million Syrians, 5.8 million Ukrainians. Same protocol, same asset class, same outcome. Not if you'll need it, when.